ChatGPT said. The wind howled like a wounded beast across the open plains, dragging dust and sorrow behind it. The sky, heavy with the kind of clouds that hadn't visited these parts in months, growled low and dangerous. Thunder cracked, sharp and sudden, shivering the horizon. Lightning danced over the dry earth like a vengeful ghost, and through it all rode a man wrapped in silence deeper than the night itself. Samuel Grady didn't much believe in signs, but if he did, he might have called the storm an omen. Not a soul in the county had seen real rain since the last frost, and now here it came angry, sudden, and cold. Water slapped his wide-brimmed hat and rolled off his oilskin duster, soaking his sleeves and making the worn leather of his gloves stick to the reins. His horse, a black gelding named Smoke, flinched at each crack of lightning, but pressed on, hooves thudding through the mud with the dogged obedience of an animal that knew its master didn't tolerate hesitation. The gate to the ranch swung on one broken hinge. The wind had done that or time. Hard to tell the difference anymore. He dismounted stiffly, knees crackling, and stepped into the wide yard littered with old fencing, rusted tools, and the ghosts of things that used to matter. The house loomed ahead tired, slumping at the corners, windows dark. He'd buried his wife and son that morning on the ridge, under the only tree still stubborn enough to stay green. 2 wooden markers. No words. Carved, just crosses. He figured God would recognize them without help. Inside, the air was stale. He lit a lantern, its glow small and fragile against the gloom, then stripped off his wet coat. Water pooled on the floorboards. A table sat in the corner, dusty, with one chair missing a leg. Another stood near the hearth, or a cold fireplace. Waited for someone to remember what warmth meant. He didn't start a fire, didn't cook. Just uncorked a bottle of rye from the shelf, sat in the lone surviving chair, and drank. Outside, thunder rolled over the hills like distant gunfire. Smoke whinnied sharply. Samuel stiffened. Another whinny, this one urgent. Then a sharp, panicked yelp. He grabbed the rifle from the wall, an old Winchester still deadly when it wanted to be, and yanked open the door. At first, he saw nothing but rain and the twitching shadows of mesquite trees. But Smoke was backing away, ears flat, nostrils flared. Something lay near the fence line. A shape, crumpled, human. He moved fast for a man his age, boots splashing. Through puddles as he crossed the yard. The figure was a girl barefoot, bloodied, half buried in mud and weeds. She stirred when he reached her, but just barely. Her face was bruised, lips cracked, hair plastered to her face with rain and blood. One arm bent at an unnatural angle. Samuel didn't ask questions, didn't call out. Just bent down, slid his arms under her, and lifted. She didn't weigh much, skin and bones mostly. Whatever had happened to her, it hadn't just started tonight. Inside, he laid her on the couch. It creaked under her weight, the springs protesting after so long unused. He fetched a towel, dabbed her face, cleaned the blood as best he could. Her breathing was shallow. She needed help more than what a half-dead rancher could offer. But the nearest doctor was a full day's ride, and the storm made that impossible. He wrapped her in a blanket, stoked a fire, and poured some broth from a dusty can into a pot. The stove groaned to life. For the first time in weeks, warmth touched the air. She didn't wake until dawn. Samuel had dozed in the chair, rifle across his lap. When he opened his eyes, hers were already on him, wide, wild, and full of something between terror and calculation. "You're safe," he said, voice like gravel. She tried to sit up, but winced and collapsed with a whimper. Her hands trembled. "I ain't gonna hurt you." Her voice came out hoarse. "Where?" "My ranch. Found you out by the fence." She scanned the room. eyes pausing on the fire, then the window, then the rifle. "Storms past," he added. "You hungry?" She didn't answer. He set a bowl of broth beside her. She sniffed it like a feral cat, then slowly sipped. Her hands shook. She didn't thank him. He didn't expect her to. He waited until the bowl was empty. Name's Samuel Grady. Nothing. "You got a name?" Her eyes flicked up, defensive. "Eliza." He nodded. "All right, Eliza." She curled tighter into the blanket. "You're not gonna—" She trailed off, too tired or too afraid to finish. "No," he said simply. The room sat heavy in silence. Outside, the storm had left puddles and scattered limbs. Birds dared to sing again. The smell of wet dirt filled the air sharp and clean. She slept most of the day. Samuel stayed close, feeding the fire, checking her fever. Once she called. Out in her sleep words he couldn't make out, but the fear in them was clear. She whimpered like a hunted animal, and he reached for her hand without thinking. It was small, calloused, and cold. That night she woke again. He'd been reading. An old book by the fire. Her eyes were open, but her face was pale as ash. "Donovan's coming," she whispered. Samuel blinked. "Who?" She clutched the blanket. "Donovan. He'll kill you." He set the book down. "Why would he do that?" Her breath quickened. "Because I ran. Because I saw too much." Samuel leaned forward. "What did you see?" She shut down then. Eyes hard, mouth shut. But her hands gave her away. They gripped the couch like she expected it to vanish beneath her. He didn't press. Just stood, poured a fresh glass of water, and handed it to her. That night, he locked the door and sat with his rifle in his lap. The next morning, the fence was broken. A single horseshoe print in the mud. Samuel knelt beside it, frowning. It hadn't been there yesterday. Smoke sniffed it, then backed away. He fixed the fence quietly, hammering the wood into place. With steady hands. Something in him had stirred. The old nerves, the edge honed in his younger days when he still wore a badge. It wasn't gone. Just buried. Like everything else. He came back inside to find Eliza standing. Wobbling, but standing. "You shouldn't." "Be up," he said. "I can't stay," she replied. "You can't walk 50 feet." "I don't care. He'll come. He always does." Samuel crossed his arms. "And what? You just die out there?" She stared at him, stubborn fire in her bloodshot eyes. "Better me than you." That gave him pause. He looked at her, really. Looked and saw someone young, broken, but still burning. That same fire he remembered in his own daughter before sickness stole her. "You're not going anywhere," he said finally. "Not till you can run faster than he can ride." She sagged back onto the couch. Didn't thank him, didn't cry, but she didn't argue either. He brought her more food, watched her eat. And when she slept again, he sat by the fire, watching the window. The storm was gone, but something worse was coming. And Samuel Grady, a man who'd buried his whole world, found himself caring whether one more soul lived or died. That surprised him almost as much as the sound of a distant horse on the wind. ChatGPT said. The fire crackled in the hearth, its glow casting flickering shadows across the cabin walls. Outside, the rain had quieted to a whisper, the land slick with the storm's remnants. The girl Eliza lay sleeping under a thick quilt. Her breathing steadier now, though she still winced every so often, as if her dreams clung to pain. Samuel sat in the armchair again, hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee gone cold. He hadn't slept. Not properly. Not in days. But now sleep felt even further away. The house felt different with her in it. Less hollow, maybe. Less dead. But not yet alive. Just unfamiliar. like someone had rearranged the furniture of his grief. He studied her in the firelight. The bruises on her jaw, the cracked lips, the way her fingers twitched even in sleep. A skittish animal, used to violence, used to running. She didn't speak much when awake, and when she did, it was short and cautious. But she watched everything, eyes sharp. She didn't trust him, not really, and maybe she was right not to. When she stirred again, morning had started to lighten the sky, a dull gray seeping through the windows. Her eyes opened slow, adjusting, and landed on him. She tensed immediately. "Morning," he said gently, not moving. Her voice was a whisper. "Still here? Didn't plan on leaving my own house." She sat up, moving carefully. Her arm was still bandaged in a makeshift sling, the bruises around her collarbone darker now. She looked like someone who had walked through hell barefoot. "Where's my knife?" she asked. "You didn't have one." She frowned. "Fork, then." He nodded toward the table. "It's right where you left it. You planning on stabbing me over breakfast?" Her mouth twitched almost a smile. "Almost. I don't eat with strangers." "Well," he said, "I'm the kind of stranger who makes eggs. That help?" She didn't answer, but she didn't say no. He made her food, eggs, toast, and beans from a can that probably should have been thrown out a year ago. She ate slowly, watching him like a hawk. Every movement measured, every bite cautious. Samuel ate too, mostly to keep her from feeling more cornered than she already did. "You gonna tell me what happened to you?" he asked between mouthfuls. "No." He nodded, as if he expected it. "You said someone's looking for you. Donovan." Her fork stopped midway to her mouth. "Forget I said that." Hard to forget a name spoken like a curse. She set the fork down, suddenly tired again. Her eyes dropped to her lap. "He's not a man you get away from." Samuel leaned back. "Well, looks like you did, for now." Silence stretched between them. The fire hissed softly. "You got family?" he asked. She shook her head. "Where are you from?" "East." "East of here's just dry scrub for 50 miles. Then further east." He let the questions go. There was no point in pushing. He recognized the steel in her. Whatever she'd come from, it wasn't something she wanted to speak aloud. And maybe she didn't have the words yet. He understood that. He remembered what silence had cost him, and what it had protected. After breakfast, she limped to the front window and peered out. Her shoulders stayed tense, her eyes scanning the horizon like something might come galloping in from the mist. "You think someone followed you here?" he asked. "They always do." "How many?" "Could be one, could be 3. Don't know how many Donovan sent?" Samuel rubbed his jaw. "You see him?" "Not yet." He didn't like the sound of that, not because he doubted her, but because he didn't. Later, he took her out back to the well. She drank deep, cupping water in her hands, letting it wash over her face. The bruises looked worse in the sunlight. Purple and green, shadows across pale skin. "You ever handle a rifle?" he asked. She looked at him sidelong. "Why?" "Because if someone's coming, I'd rather we both shoot back." Her expression didn't change, but she nodded. He fetched his old Henry rifle and handed it to her. She cradled it like an old friend, checked the chamber without asking, and sighted it against the edge of the barn. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. "From worse men than you." Fair enough, he thought. She handed the rifle back, but he saw the way her fingers lingered. Not afraid of the gun, afraid of needing it again. That night, the fire burned lower. They didn't talk much, just sat with the quiet between them. At one point, she asked, "What happened to your family?" He didn't look up from the fire. "Fever took my boy. Wife followed him 2 weeks later. Grief does that sometimes." Eliza didn't say sorry. He appreciated that. Instead, she said, That's why you live out here alone? No, I live out here because there's nothing else left for me. She was quiet a moment. That what you believe? He shrugged. Most days. The wind picked up outside, brushing the window with dry fingers. Coyotes yipped in the distance. Eliza stirred restlessly. Her hand drifted to the fork on the table. You ain't safe here, she said. I was never safe. Just got used to it. If they come, they'll burn this place down to get to me. Samuel poured another glass of rye, took a sip. Then I'll rebuild. You'd die for a stranger? I buried everyone I ever knew. Not much left to die for. She watched him for a long moment. Don't be a fool. Not a fool, he said, just tired of doing nothing. The next day, she helped him fix the broken shutters. Her arm was still sore, but she insisted. Sighed she needed to move or she'd go crazy. She climbed the ladder like she had something to prove. He stayed below, passing nails and muttering curses every time the hammer missed. You always this grumpy? She asked, looking down at him. You always this nosy? She smirked. You. Ever think about leaving? Had a life once. Not sure where I'd go now. Well, if Donovan's men find me, you won't have to worry about that decision. You're awful chipper about possibly dying. I got tired of being. Scared, Samuel handed her the last nail. That's how you know you're ready to fight. That evening, while gathering firewood near the barn, Samuel paused. Something felt wrong. The birds had gone quiet. His gut clenched. He scanned the ridge. A flicker of movement. He ducked behind the woodpile and waited. After several minutes, he saw the glint of sunlight off metal far off, almost too far to make out. A man on horseback, watching. He returned to the house and didn't tell Eliza what he'd seen. Instead, he boarded the windows and loaded his rifle. That night, she noticed the change. They're close, she said. He didn't answer. What are we gonna do? We're gonna be ready. She stared at the boarded window, arms crossed. They won't stop. Donovan doesn't let people walk away. You walked. I'll pay for it. Samuel stepped close. You don't have to face this alone. She looked at him then, really looked. Like she was seeing him not as a stranger, but something closer to a person. The way someone looks. At a man they might trust, but don't want to yet. You don't know what you're offering, she said. He smiled, just barely. Don't need to. I'm offering it anyway. She didn't say thank you. But that night, she didn't sleep, with the fork under her pillow. By morning, clouds gathered again. Not the storm kind. The silent kind. The kind that comes before something worse than rain. Eliza stood by the window, eyes fixed on the hills. Samuel loaded cartridges into the Winchester with practiced hands. They didn't speak much, didn't need to. Something had shifted, and they both knew the fire wasn't the only thing that would need tending soon. ChatGPT said the wind carried the scent of sagebrush and tension. It blew through the high grass, stirring whispers through the fields and across the broken fence line. Samuel stood on the porch with his rifle in hand, boots planted wide, watching. The ridge with the quiet intensity of a man who'd stared down loss and never blinked. The land held its breath with him. Inside, Eliza paced. She'd stopped pretending to be calm. Her hands curled into fists, opening and closing, as though she needed something to hold, something heavier than fear. She wore one of Samuel's spare. Shirts now, sleeves rolled, bandages peeking out beneath the collar. The bruises on her face had faded from black to yellow, but the ones inside her still glowed hot. They're out there, she said, not asking. He didn't nod, but she knew he heard her. That was something she'd learned about him. Samuel didn't speak unless words mattered. He moved like a man whose bones remembered war. Not the kind. with uniforms and flags, but the kind fought in dusty towns and lonely barns. The kind you didn't brag about. Eliza picked up the Henry rifle resting on the table and checked the chamber. She'd cleaned it earlier, oiled it, like she'd been taught by someone long gone. She could still feel the cold steel in her hands. From that time, from the man who first put a gun in her palm and told her the world didn't owe her a damn thing. That same man sold her to Donovan Wade a week later. A horse neighed out past the ridge. Samuel raised the rifle. "That ain't smoke." Eliza joined him on the porch. 3 shapes on horseback emerged from the dust cloud near the road. Slow, deliberate, no rush. That was worse. Rushing meant panic. Slow meant control. They knew where they were. They knew what they wanted. 3 of them, she whispered. Donovan doesn't come for anything himself. He sends the men who already have blood on their boots. Samuel spat into the dirt. That's so. The riders dismounted 100 yards out, far enough to talk, close enough to shoot. One called out, voice lazy like a snake coiled in sun. "We're just here for the girl." Eliza stiffened. Samuel stepped forward, rifle raised just high enough to be noticed. "You're trespassing," he said. The speaker grinned. Eliza remembered him, short, scarred cheek, teeth like corn kernels. His name was Briar, a man who'd laughed when another girl got whipped, a man who'd once tied her to a tree just to see if she'd cry. Briar cupped his hands. "Don't make this hard, old man. She comes with us. Nobody gets hurt." Samuel didn't answer, just pulled the hammer back on his rifle. The click echoed. The second rider shouted, voice harder, "She's ours." Don't matter if she ran. She was bought. Eliza's stomach turned. Rage replaced fear. "I wasn't bought," she shouted. "I was stolen," Briar smirked. "You don't get to rewrite how the world works, girl." Samuel shifted his stance. "She's under my roof. That means she's mine to protect." Big words for a widowed rancher with no kin and a broken gate. Samuel fired. The bullet struck Briar in the thigh. The man screamed and dropped, clutching his leg. The other 2 scattered, one ducking behind a mesquite tree, the other firing wildly as he ran for cover. The air filled with the thunder of gunfire. Eliza dropped to her stomach and crawled to the woodpile, rifle tight in hand. She breathed through her teeth, heart pounding so hard she could hear it between shots. Dust kicked up around her. A bullet cracked the ground inches from her boot. She raised the rifle, took aim at the man crouched behind the water trough, and fired. He jerked back, then collapsed. Hit. She didn't wait to see if he was dead. She rolled to the side and fired again, covering Samuel as he moved to the barn. Briar was crawling now, groaning, dragging himself behind his horse. "You're bleeding out," Samuel called. "Best crawl home before the buzzards get interested." The third man broke from cover, gun blazing. Samuel ducked behind the trough, waited, then stepped out and fired once. The man spun and dropped. Silence fell. Eliza stood slowly. Her knees shook, but not from fear, from release. Samuel approached the bodies, checked pulses. He pulled weapons off the corpses and tossed them in a pile. Only Briar still breathed barely. Blood soaked his leg and pooled in the dust. Samuel knelt beside him. "How many more are coming?" Briar coughed blood. "Donovan, don't stop. She's marked. She's free now. You'll both be dead in a week." Eliza walked over, rifle still in hand. She looked down at him, breathing heavy. Briar smirked through the pain. "You think you're safe? You're nothing but property, girl." She raised the rifle. Samuel grabbed the barrel. "That ain't justice." She looked at him, jaw clenched. "And what is?" He didn't answer. After a moment, she lowered the gun. They let Briar live. Barely. Samuel tied him to a saddle and sent Smoke to town with him limping behind. Let someone else deal with the law, if the law still mattered. Later, after the bodies were burned, they sat on the porch in silence. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon in orange and violet. Ash floated on the wind. Eliza stared at the sky, hands blackened from smoke and sweat. I thought I'd feel something. You don't? I don't know. Maybe I burned it out of me. Samuel looked over. You shot to kill. They were coming to kill me. He nodded. Still, you didn't have to. You chose to. She studied his face. Is that a bad thing? No, just means you're changing. She picked at a splinter on the rail. I used to pray I'd disappear, that if I got quiet enough, small enough, I could vanish. Be nothing. Now I don't want that. What do you want? I want him to know he didn't win. Samuel stood, joints popping, and fetched 2 cups. He poured coffee, bitter and black, and handed her one. To the ones who don't disappear, he said. She clinked her cup against his and sipped. That night, she sat by the fire and cleaned. The rifle again, movements slow and careful, like it was a ritual. Samuel watched her from across the room. Something in her had shifted. A steel spine now, less tremble in her hands, less flinching at loud sounds. He didn't ask if she was. All right. She wouldn't have answered truthfully anyway. Instead, he said, You ever think about what comes next? She shrugged. Thought I'd be dead by now. You're not. No, I'm not. He leaned forward. Then maybe it's time? You figured out who you are without running. She looked at the rifle. I only know how to survive. That's something, he said. But there's more than just surviving. She gave a half smile. Like what? He stared into the fire. Like living. Like forgiving yourself. She looked at him, long and hard. You still trying to do that too? Every damn day. They didn't talk much after that. The quiet between them wasn't empty anymore. It was something built. Something earned. Like the trust between 2 people who'd both seen death and chosen to keep standing anyway. Before they turned in, she walked to the porch one last time, stared out at the dark fields. The wind brushed her hair back. She closed her eyes and breathed deep. No footsteps behind her. No cuffs on her wrists. No collar. Just space. Just night. Samuel stood in the doorway, watching. You can stay as long as you want, he said. She didn't look back. Might take you up on that. And for the first time since she'd arrived, the door closed without the sound of a lock turning behind it. The sun rose over the horizon, casting long gold fingers across the dry plains, turning dust into firelight and broken fences into shadows of their former selves. The ranch stood quiet. Smoke curled from the chimney. Birds stirred in the cottonwood. Tree by the well. A place that had once felt like a grave, now breathed with slow, cautious life. Inside, Eliza scrubbed the floor with both hands. Sleeves rolled to her elbows. Hair tied back in a fraying ribbon she'd found in a drawer. The same ribbon likely belonged to Samuel's daughter, long since gone, but not forgotten. She didn't ask. He didn't offer. But he noticed the ribbon, and didn't take it away. That was enough. She paused and leaned on the bucket, rubbing her sore wrist. The morning had been long feeding the chickens, hauling water, patching a torn curtain that flapped like a ghost in the wind. And now this. But there was a rhythm to the labor, and rhythm was something her body understood. Work kept the mind still. Samuel entered from the barn, sweat on his brow, a coil of rope over one shoulder, and a quiet pride in his posture that hadn't been there weeks ago. He nodded at the clean floor. Place is starting to look like someone. Gives a damn. Eliza gave a tired half-smile. Don't get used to it. I might leave it dirty tomorrow. He set the rope down by the door. You keep threatening to leave. Maybe one day I will. You planning on walking? She smirked. Was hoping you'd offer me a horse. Samuel leaned against the doorframe. Thought you said you weren't staying. I said I might not. He watched her a moment, eyes tracing the angle of her jaw, the new strength in her shoulders. She was still thin, still marked by the past, but something had changed. Her voice no longer trembled. Her eyes no longer searched every shadow. She moved with purpose now, not fear. That night, over stew and cornbread, she finally asked the question that had been hanging in the air between them for days. What happens when he comes back? Samuel didn't ask who she meant. He stirred the stew slowly, deliberately. Then we handle it. And if we don't win? He looked up. Then we make sure they don't either. She fell quiet for a moment, then said, I don't want to run anymore. Good, he said. Neither do I. The days passed with a strange sort of peace. Fences got mended. The well pump stopped creaking. Smoke's limp healed. A new calf was born one morning under a pink sky, and Eliza was the first to see it breathe. She called it Clover. Samuel said it was a silly name, but she caught him using it once, when he thought she wasn't listening. Then, just as the world had begun to feel steady, it tilted again. The first sign came with the hawk. It circled overhead, low and slow, watching. Then, hoof prints at the edge of the north pasture. Not from their horses. Lighter. Faster got Eliza, found the mark carved into a fence post, a crude W. Donovan Wade symbol. Burned into wood like he'd branded the whole world as his. That night, Samuel cleaned his rifle on the porch. Eliza sharpened a knife she kept tucked in her boot. Neither spoke, but the air was full of old promises and new resolve. He broke the silence first. Still time to go. She shook her head. Still time to stand? He studied her a long moment. You're not the same girl who showed up bleeding and barefoot. And you're not the same man who opened the door expecting to die alone. He smiled faintly. Guess that makes us even. The attack came at dawn. 3 riders again, but faster this time. No warnings, no words. Just bullets and smoke. Samuel fired first, dropping one before he could reach the barn. Eliza rolled from the porch and took cover behind the trough, firing. Steady, breath even. One of the men circled wide, trying to flank. She saw him too late, but Smoke, startled by the gunfire, reared and struck. The man fell. Samuel ended it with a single shot. The 3rd rider made it into the house. Eliza followed, heart racing. Inside, dust and sunlight danced between bullets. She caught a glimpse of a face through the doorway, young, twisted with fear and hunger. Not much older than her. But he raised his pistol. She didn't hesitate. Afterward, she sat on the floor beside the body, shaking. Not from regret. From the weight of surviving. Again, Samuel crouched beside her. You all right? She nodded, voice low. I didn't miss. You didn't blink. He helped her to her feet. She stood taller now, even in silence. They buried the bodies far off the property. No words. No markers. When they returned, Eliza stood by the tree on the ridge, the one with 2 graves beneath it. She looked down, then up at the sky, then back. At the ranch, I don't think I'm running ever again, she said. Samuel joined her, hands in his pockets. What changed? You did. He didn't speak right away. You gave me something back too, you know. What? He looked out at the land, the fences, the barn, the porch, where Smoke stood chewing lazily. The quiet that no longer felt empty. A reason, he said. To get up, to fix things, to care again. Eliza blinked hard, as if something stung her eyes. That's not what I meant to do. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Back at the house, she opened the chest at the foot of the bed and pulled out the ribbon again, smoothed it with her thumb. She tied it back into her hair and looked. In the mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. Not just the bruises, which had faded, not just the weight she'd regained, dotted was the eyes. They didn't look hunted anymore. The next morning, Samuel saddled 2 horses. Eliza watched from the porch. "We going somewhere?" "You said you'd leave someday," he said. "Figured we'd find out what's out there. Might be more than barbed wire and ghosts." She stepped off the porch, boots crunching the gravel. "I still don't know who I am out there. Then we'll find out together." They rode at dawn, hooves soft against the road, sky turning pink above them. The house stood behind them, not abandoned, not forgotten, just waiting, like it always had. And as they crossed the ridge, the sun at their backs, Eliza looked over at the man beside her, gruff, steady, once broken. And she knew, without needing to say it, that she had given him back something even more precious. Than survival. She had given him the chance to begin again. Somewhere on the wind behind them, the whisper of an old name faded. And ahead, for the first time in a long time, there was only light. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Every story's better when it's shared.